Hello.
Hello.
Lisa. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hello again, Lisa.
Hey, Greg.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No? Okay, cool.
Oh, hello. How's it going?
Good. Hi, Juan.
Nice to meet you, Lisa. How's it going?
Nice to meet you. It's pretty rainy here, but going great.
Cool. Rain can be nice sometimes. By the way, I'm just shipping the ability to do custom linter rules in my linter. Super excited about that.
Oh,
Has
cool.
been a big request using JSON Schema. So alternatively, from the actual rules, you can pass schemas as rules, and a lot of people want that for modeling guidelines and stuff like that. Turns out.
Yeah, I think that is definitely an essential feature for a linter. At least the ability to like turn on and off, certain rules. But
Of
being
course,
able
yeah.
to do custom rules is pretty
Yeah,
nice.
like company-specific ones, right? And I found that I've been teaching people to do this with meta schemas, right? In a way, but it's complicated, with like the dynamic anchors and everything. So I've done it such that you just pass one schema, like the engine will like automatically apply to every possible sub schema, and like people get it, but as soon as you put the dynamics, stuff, like people get lost. So yeah, it's a hard to grasp feature, turns out.
Yeah, and not everything can be handled just by metaschema. Like it takes more
Sure.
more intricate analysis.
But
Static
that's
analysis.
where like the actual advanced rules are implemented in code. But then for a lot of cases, you want these like custom ones, for your company that might be very simple, like just requiring everything to be type object at the root or something silly like that.
Mhm.
It comes up a lot.
Yeah. Hello, Victor.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you, guys. Victor's from the JSON LD group that I was telling you guys about the other day.
I remember, I think we had a chat at some point, Victor, right? Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to come up with. I'm outside. Yeah.
Nice, nice.
I'm actually independent. Being actually active in the SPX community first, which we use JSON-LD. So that's where I find eventually I think there's something that needs to be interesting intersection between JSON schema and JSON-LD. And
It keeps
now,
coming up a lot. Yeah, everywhere.
yeah, JSON schema is probably more than JSON-LD, but JSON-LD is gets people paying attention because of the linked data. So I think in order to verify the semantic meaning of data, right now it has to use something called shackle, which is quite hard. So yeah, I think it'll be something interesting to do those together with JSON schema and JSON-LD.
We should, 100%.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here mostly just to listen. To be honest, I'm just happy to be accepted kind of doing admin for the JSON-LD working group. Not JSON-LD expert yet, but yeah, love to learn this in schema as well.
Cool. Yeah, good to see you, Victor.
Well, do we have an agenda though, or what's the plan?
That's a good question. I don't think we do. We haven't been very good at writing up an agenda. I don't think it's been terribly necessary. We don't we don't generally have so much to talk about that we can't just bring up what we want to talk about when we're here. So I think we can do the same today. I guess we've given 5 minutes for people to show up. I think we can get started. Do we want to start with just some quick updates from I guess from TSC members on what we've been working on recently? Start from there.
Yeah, go for it. You go first, Jason. Have the mic.
All right. Well, I've been mostly trying to manage all of the Google Summer of Code stuff that's been coming around. I've got a lot of people wanting to contribute to some of my libraries and get some experience in JSON Schema through that. Specifically, the errors project that was started in the last Google Summer of Code. There have been a lot of people coming by and helping out, trying to get that finished up. So I've been working on that a lot. I've also been trying to work on the styling for our spec build, because it was kind of like using like an old just like generic styles, and I just thought it should have something nicer for release. So I'm not a web designer, but I did my best to put something together with a little bit of help from the LLMs, and I think it's coming out pretty nice. But I'm hoping to get I think with the spec, I mean, we're pretty much where we want to be, except for just like I kind of want to do one more read through and make sure there's there's no glaring issues, and then I think it's mostly ready. So I think that's me. That's about all. Juan, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, also lots of Google Summer of Code stuff. I mean, I think as usual, right? I mean, we announce Google Summer of Code. I mean, even though we're applying as a group, and we get like a flood of people everywhere, and I think that can be good or bad depending on how you manage that. I think I've been doing a good enough job, I think, about it. I mean, even beyond some of the projects I've been mentoring, I'm getting a lot of people interested in this kind of stuff, and that has been great. But I've also seen like a surge of like new developers trying to send PRs to a bunch of my tools in general, but that has been nice. I think there has been some good results about it, so I can't really complain. I mean, it was some extra, PR reviews than usual, but I think I managed to channel that into some cool stuff. So I think that's good. Other than that, yeah, I mean, just lots of improvement to like LinkedIn and things like that. So it's shaping up really well.
Yeah, I think
The dependency installation part, I think that was a big one. I don't know if you guys saw that.
that's really cool.
Yeah, right. I think a lot of people have been requesting that. And I remember again, like having conversations with you, Jason, about that at some point. But it was like the idea that you can do JSON schema.json, declare your JSON schema dependencies, and be able to do JSON schema install, get the log file, getting that to talk, very well to some registries out there, including mine, handling the bundling, all of that kind of stuff. And I've launched like a first version of that very recently out of an engagement I was working on. And this seems to be quite good. I think it's like an alpha version still. There are probably some rough edges. I think the output that you get while running the tool is a bit shitty, to be honest. But I think it works, and I think people are liking it. So, yeah, that's been a major one. I could totally forgot about that. But yeah,
Cool. All right.
yeah, well, do Greg.
I'm not doing GSSC this year. Same as last year. I'm quite busy with my job and family and stuff. But what I have been doing is talking with Lisa, hi Lisa, about potential for IETF involvement with the project. And I don't know if that's something that we're going to be discussing here. Maybe not. But that's pretty much what I've been doing, I guess, over the past month or so. I have been making updates to my libraries, but it's more around the schema generation stuff than anything else.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a big problem as well.
Yeah, well,
so
problems there.
So in .NET, there are, the way that I've done it is to use a runtime reflection of C# types, or rather .NET types. And on some systems, like on, I believe Apple doesn't allow that kind of, it allows some reflection, but it then doesn't allow like just-in-time compilation of things, which sometimes is required to create new types on the fly and that kind of thing. You have to know all the types that you're creating when you build the binary. To address this, .NET a few versions ago came up with source generators. So it runs at compile time and actually generates C# source code that then gets included into the compilation. So it allows you to get around the need to do just-in-time compilation at runtime. So I've been able to build a source generator for my package, and now you can generate schemas for specific types as marked by attributes in your code at compile time. And then you can see what those schemas are in the generated code as well.
Cool.
Nice.
So
yeah, it's
that
sad that we
unlocks
have to
schema
do that,
generation.
you know. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
sad that we have to go and do that for every single language out there, right? I think that's the bad thing. Yeah, I think we're getting there.
So that's what I've been doing.
All right. Well, I guess next maybe we go to Lisa and you can tell us what you've been working on, and I'm sure we all have lots of questions for you.
Yeah. So I've been working on the version of the spec that I would be willing to put my name on as editor. And this is just a personal thing. It doesn't have any standing if I do this. But people could look at it and decide what the next step is. In particular, like Andy Newton and Paul at the IT, who, you know, I was talking to at the last ITF about this, would be interested in seeing that draft and circulating it to see if there's interest in chartering a JSON Schema working group with input from this community as well, of course. The things I thought would be useful to get into a version to start working from included moving a bunch of sections around and adding a terminology section that was really just terminology, not even definitions, just like go back here to refresh yourself. It doesn't fully define a term, but you can refresh your terminology in the terminology section, which since I didn't use JSON Schema very much for a few years and came back to it and was like, let me really dig into the specification. I feel like within the last 6-8 months, I came at it with experienced schema person, like I did XML schema back in the day, but new to the JSON Schema spec. And so reading it, I was like, there's a bunch of pitfalls in here for a reader who wants to be an author of JSON schemas. So the organization I'm drafting now is, first of all the material that an author of JSON schemas would want, just an author, not even meta schemas and not an implementer. And then following on from that were the requirements on implementations, whether they're validators or doc generators or something else. And then after that, extensibility and meta schema specific stuff, to the extent that it's possible to move that towards the back of the spec. I look forward to hearing what people think about it, if it's good, if it works. I talked to what is his name? I'm blanking on the name of the guy who was chair of the
Bray?
What?
Is it Bray? Tim Bray?
Tim Bray, thank you. Tim B. Well, that Tim B. I talked to Tim Bray about the project generally, and he said, please, for the love of God, put examples and what it does into the specification. So I'm certainly interested in gathering more input like that, not just Tim, but what other people would like to see, and we'll see where it goes. Like there's certainly no formal status now, and even once I publish it as a 0.0 draft, it'll have no formal status. But then everybody will get a chance to see what I'm thinking of. Right. You're muted still?
My understanding is that you started from the existing publication, which is the 2012 specification.
Right.
Since then, Jason and I, in particular, with discussion with a lot of other people, have made edits to those two documents that comprise the 2012 specification, and we've made changes in kind of a direction that will prioritize compatibility between release versions, as well as pulling out some features like vocabularies in the output format in order to kind of sequester those in a proposal state, because those are not finished. And then some other stuff like around dynamic anchors and dynamic ref, just kind of some cleanup there. Those are kind of the big things that we've really changed as far as the requirements. Outside of that is just more process-oriented stuff and how we want to release the spec going forward, and changes, managing changes between versions in order to maximize compatibility. Because that's a complaint that we've been getting over the past decade of releasing multiple specifications and including breaking changes between those specifications. How much of that are you looking to put into your document, or are you just really looking to, I guess, reorganize the 2012 specification in a just a reorganization?
I thought the reorganization was good to get under in first, because then it's harder to do reorgs the longer you go, because people rely on diffs to figure out what's going on. So I'm not making changes to any features while I'm doing the reorg. And I'm quite in agreement over removing features that aren't really in wide deployment, that have had some issues with them, not in removing them forever, but in setting them to the side. Say the vocabulary keyword is reserved. We will have a separate document, maybe somewhere else, that explains vocabulary. Or if you, as you know, Austin's been still thinking about JSON schema extensibility in his very language theory way, and talking about things like user-defined keywords that are actually URIs to avoid conflict with other keywords, or having some strict mode that tells the implementation looking at a schema to stop if it doesn't recognize any of these keywords. Those are interesting. Those are all interesting things. But probably a lot of them, except for just reserving the keyword that is a keyword of interest for future use, and so don't stomp on it, could be done outside of a core stable RFC. And I think that would be really good for the world. It's got its pros and cons, obviously. It becomes the core, a defined core in an RFC becomes extremely stable, reliable, and you could like pound on everybody's desks and say, this is what you should be implementing. And anybody who's not following some of the recommendations, there's a certain amount of force, moral force that you can supply with that. But it does make it harder to make people pick up extensions that they don't particularly want to pick up, unless you go through the process of defining another RFC or making it required, or revising the core RFC and saying, no, this other stuff is now also. Like if you take vocabularies out, make an RFC and then try to put vocabularies back in as a required thing, it might be it might just delay everything years. So it's a community consensus thing. I'm not going to be the decider of that. That is going to be a consensus call, and IETF rules. Everybody who wants to participate in the consensus call can and should.
Yeah, our experience, our experience has been if it's not listed in the specification as a requirement, implementers won't do it,
Right.
even if it's some extension that adds really cool functionality. Implementers won't do it because they really will only do the core, which is why we kept throwing stuff like vocabularies, even though it wasn't done. We still wanted to get feedback on it, and so we put it in the spec. But then implementers would have that feedback, those questions, and that's how we would get that.
Yeah.
But then it really wasn't a done feature.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out how to resolve that.
Yeah, as you know, there's always problems with that.
And even then, right? I mean, I keep encountering people that are implementing JSON schema, and they would just tell me, well, I mean, I'm implementing these, but this other required thing, not because I don't agree, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Or I don't understand.
It's a hard thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I think it's bad, therefore, I'll just not implement it. So.
Yeah. So I wanted to say I completely agree that the spec is a bit of a mess. It's certainly very bloated and could be trimmed down. I think that's partly an artifact of it just changing authors so many times, but it definitely needs a significant cleanup. And that's actually part of the reason why we want to do something more of a living spec kind of thing, so that we can kind of do those cleanup things incrementally over time, and not have it block our ability to publish a new spec or anything like that. And so I'm curious, what kind of space is there within IETF for living spec kind of process?
Well, I wouldn't say it's in the IETF per se. There are certainly areas where there's a core or a base, and once you bootstrap from there, there are additional things which aren't just like, it's not just like what documents are to JSON schema. It's like what further JSON schema is to what JSON schema. You can find analogies of that in the IETF where further work in addition to the core stable specs can be done in a living document basis. But I wouldn't say that there's living document support for a core RFC if that was the way we're to go. If you have a proposal for the whole thing to be living document, again, it's not my decision to make, it's a consensus call, but I'd personally be concerned about how many JSON schema documents out there are now 10 years old, and what are you going to do about them? Yeah,
well, the process that we're planning on at the moment is very similar to ECMA or ECMAScript, where it's effectively a living document, but there's new there's a version every year, cut, and every change is backwards compatible, so that all existing implementations and schemas will all work the same way that they did with the new version.
Yeah, you can certainly go that direction. I don't participate in ECMA, and I won't because it's not a fully open participation process. But yeah, that might be a better fit.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I wanted to mention was I'm curious, or I guess I'm concerned, I should say, that if you're going to start with the 2012 and clean it up and put something out there, I'm concerned that that it would be considered a fork JSON schema that's a different direction than we're going right now, where we have been going for the last few years. And that could cause some confusion around what is JSON schema.
Yeah. Do you want to do some work with me to align those?
I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been meaning to mention, I didn't know how public the Slack channel was, but this group is not the whole wide internet. So my personal scheduling link is open, and I'm happy to nerd out on why I'm doing this in DTI. And I've got a project that has sort of been on my mind for 15 years on registering data schemas and protocol message schemas in a way that is sort of the dual of schema.org. So mine is I actually registered a domain for it this year. It's called schemas.pub. And schemas is definitely plural because it's taco rules, porque no los dos, rather than Highlander rules.
Okay. Yeah, I'll set up a meeting and we can discuss some things.
Fantastic.
Great.
But I certainly didn't want to hijack this talking about schemas.pub.
Yeah, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and I'm blanking on what it was, but maybe I'll remember in a few minutes. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else to say, real quick, maybe we'll switch gears.
I did want to ask Lisa, or just have Lisa talk about what her motivation is for bringing this to IETF, and yeah, just what instigated this investigation into JSON schema, and what's your driving motivation?
Yeah. There's a bunch of RFCs or internet drafts that might become RFCs that would benefit from it, would simplify their lives and make everything more stable if they could have a normative reference to a JSON schema RFC. That would be absolutely the easiest within the IETF document series. There's quite a few JSON schema adherents in the IETF, people who prefer to use it. Sometimes they're using CDDL these days and CBOR because that is an IETF reference now, so you can reference it. And I have nothing against CDDL, CBOR, but as a matter of taste, and for most of the applications I work in where binary representation isn't important or necessarily even desired when you're debugging something, I just like the aesthetics of JSON schema, So finding out that these internet drafts are going to get into trouble. I just asked, what's his name, Rich Saltz, the chair of the HTTP API working group, and it turned out he coincidentally was already fired up about this. He had just sent a message to the HTTP API mailing list saying, let's take on JSON schema as a working group item. And the AD said, no, there's not enough of a public call. If you try to just put this into an existing working group, it doesn't allow us to really discuss what should be in charter. We can have things in charter like adding the $schema keyword to JSON. That can absolutely be in the within the chartered scope of an IETF working group. So I think the ADs made the right call to say, this is a good idea, but not in this working group. If we're going to do this, let's charter another working group. That's when Paul Hoffman got pulled into conversations. He said he'd be happy to chair a working group, but he wanted to see a document first.
Okay, what would governance of JSON schema look like? What would IETF want control over as far as specification development, community, publications, those kinds of things? Governance.
Yeah, well, IETF is not a very jealous, territory grabbing kind of org. There's a certain momentum to things that start getting done inside IETF, but there's been plenty of work that honestly, sometimes outside groups have driven the IETF work fairly strongly by using the power of collaboration between and outside of IETF meetings, like CalConnect. I was a member of CalConnect for a number of years. And while we still had to go to the IETF and get IETF consensus before getting an RFC number for a document, the CalConnect consortium and its members did testing groups, did testing events, did fostered frequent conversations between implementers, made suggestions for the IETF documents, hosted extensions on the CalConnect site. Yeah, there's a lot of room for, oh, and running not just testing events, but summits, mini conferences. So there's a lot of room for outside organizations to have a good influence on the steering wheel.
What about development of the specification itself? Would we still be in control of that, or how much of that control would we have?
I mean, ultimately, it has to meet working group consensus and then go through IETF last call. So that also means that it needs to go through the IETF internet draft publication, repeated process, and the posting to the working group and saying, here's draft 09, these changes, let's have a working group call on these things, which we now think are stable and we might have working group consensus on. So if the working group consensus is, let's, keep vocabularies, and the Jason, Greg, and Juan consensus is, no, we don't like vocabularies, there would have to be a large consensus in the working group to deal with that. And, I've been in this position before. When I was the area director for IDNA BIS, there was a bit of a lack of communication across two parts of the community. The browser people were mostly talking at what working group and not attending the IETF. And the IETF people had some IDNA rules for domain names and in URLs and how to deal with them in browsers that the browser people tended not to like, but not enough of them were participating in the working group to be a very obvious challenge to the consensus. Do you know what I mean? Like, one guy, his name's Mark Baker, by the way, he was there saying, like, I don't think the browsers are okay with this. I'm worried they won't implement it. I've been talking to the browsers all along. They have a problem with this thing. And the working group chairs just said, no, that's okay. We have working group consensus. And as area director, I said, I think I see what's going on. It's not just Mark Baker who is in the rough. He's speaking for a community that's not here. Let's bridge that gap and talk to that community. Of course, it would have been easier if they'd been participating all along, but it's still possible to fix last minute by saying, like, okay, browsers, please review this. This is your last chance to review this. There's these parts of the document that are important to you, and get that input and resolve it. And it ended up going the browser's way. So I think it worked out well, but it requires humans to try to do the right thing and try to communicate, which is always hard.
Yeah.
I think, just coming back to what you initially said, right? One of the key challenges and friction here was other RFC not being able to easily, cite JSON schema, or use it as a normative reference. I think that's a big problem for a specification in general, right? We probably want to reduce all of that friction so that we start cultivating more of an ecosystem around it. And I wonder how complemental that can be. Like, for example, and I don't know how this holds even outside of the IETF. Like, for example, let's say that we publish on the IETF, then would, for example, other ECMA standards have the same problem if it's not actually ECMA, right? I'm not sure what extent of that, but what would be a way, like a pragmatic way for an organization like us to achieve all of those benefits? Like, is fully joining the IETF and only publishing there the only option? Is there actually more of a range? And I'm asking because I'm not a spec author, right? I'm working mostly in the tooling aspect, but that sounds like a legit problem. And maybe there is more than one solution worth discussing or bringing to the table.
Yeah, no, you absolutely don't have to do all your work in IETF, even if there is someday a JSON Schema core RFC. Extensions and next versions don't all have to be worked on in the IETF context. And because you've said ECMA might be a good fit, it's fully possible for IETF to reference ECMA specifications. It's a bit more of a cultural barrier to do so, but that's it. It's technically quite feasible, and it certainly happens.
And what about, for example, technologies, I guess, like JSON, that as a notable one that is both on ECMA and on IETF? How does that even work?
Well, IETF references the IETF JSON.
Yeah, but it has some additional little constraints and recommendations on top of, for example, the ECMA one. But I think that came up at something that, I guess, it is in two places. And is it on two places to solve this normative reference problem, or is it in two places because of other reasons? And what can we learn from that?
I don't know. When did ECMA define a JSON spec? Do you have a link to it, and what year did that happen? There's a misunderstanding.
That is
to find it.
My assumption was that is that you guys all worked together to make, to do that and make sure they were compatible. And I don't know why each of you had to have your own separate spec for it, but I assumed that everybody was working together to make sure those two things were compatible. And I'm sure they are.
Was it done in 2020? No, that's a Japanese translation.
So 2013 seems to be the first edition.
2013 to 2017. I was retired from IETF during those years, so I don't know technically how this collaboration went. I got really burnt out on the IETF upper level, just difficulties, things like people who didn't want specifications to have images in them, diagrams, people who didn't understand why the patent rules that Cisco and Juniper were so happy with were not so great for startups. I got really bitter about a whole bunch of things, burned out, and quit the IETF forever. But since then, I tried W3C and other places, and I'm like, doing these kinds of things at scale is always a total mess. And I actually kind of like the IETF total mess after all.
The least worst, maybe, after the experience.
Yeah. It has a certain moral high ground to it, which I like.
So
I don't know how in detail the ECMA version of JSON fits in. I do know that it's much more common for. I haven't even noticed any IETF RFCs referencing the ECMA JSON, so I assume that they don't.
I would assume that, I would assume that ECMA would stick with the ECMA references and IETF would stick with the IETF references, but I'm sure the two specifications must be equivalent.
I mean, they're most equivalent. They won't deviate, but the IETF one has some recommendations, some shoots on top of it. For example, on what integer range you should use to represent integers and things like that. The ECMA one doesn't touch from a grammar point of view. So I mean, they're compatible, but the IETF is a little bit more opinionated on some things. But I guess where I wanted to go with the JSON example is that, I think, as you said, Jason, right? I think the ECMA ones will prefer to link to the ECMA one, right? The IETF one are going to prefer linking to the IETF one. So how do we solve that problem in general? Because it sounds like no matter what side of the coin you are, then there is somebody who's going to be unhappy. And maybe that's a good enough reality. But then from a more pragmatic point of view, would there in theory be a way that we could solve that in a better way? Like, for example, if we're saying this is a living spec and we cut out certain versions every year, could those be assigned RFC numbers, for example? while having both modes in parallel. Maybe, I guess all I'm done pointing out, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I think you guys are the experts on this stuff, but is there some gray area that we're not seeing that gives us all the pros without the cons?
Yeah. Have you ever played any of those games that Douglas Hofstadter talks about that are self-modifying games? The IETF is like Moo and Nomic. The IETF is like that. The IETF's rules are rules for modifying the IETF rules. So you never say never. It's not frequently done for working groups to have a yearly cadence. That would probably be seen to be pretty punishing. But there are certainly technologies that update their RFCs more frequently than every 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's part of the reason why, or that was one of the reasons why we thought IETF wasn't going to be a good fit for us. You know, when we had this discussion a few years back.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'd
has
be
anybody ever thought
interested.
about using, sorry, Greg, I believe I spoke over you, but I just wanted to ask, have you ever thought about using IANA to register keywords? Not necessarily a good idea, but it's a possibility.
Hadn't thought about that, but that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do for like extension keywords and stuff. Yeah. We were looking into registering media types through IETF, but hadn't thought of that angle. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So in that case, we'd have a core specification that's an RFC, and then that would reference some registry in IANA to that would list out different keywords.
Yep.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, and namespaces and IANA registries are a curious thing. One thing, you can carve out what you like when you're making the rules for a brand new registry. For example, one rule might be that in this registry, documents with an RFC status get to register new keywords, but also JSONschema.org gets to register new keywords through its processes. And here are the review team.
And maybe it's a maturity model of sorts, right? And I think that there has been a lot of discussions around that on the new spec. But like, for example, like if the IETF is like the rock solid RFC number that probably doesn't change very much and people will want to see on that, is there a way that we can get that as well? I mean, that doesn't sound like a disadvantage at all, right? And I think we all probably agree that there is a good enough subset of JSON schema that will not change anymore at all, right? Because that would be extremely problematic to change at this point. And at least would it be possible to at least cut that out at least some IETF RFCs on certain frequencies to get that advantage while retaining, for example, all of the other ones? I think there is a path somehow, but it might be a bit clever. But we might need to figure it out, and then we keep both things in a way.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
The most common pattern is to get a core thing really solid, and then extensions happen in different directions, and none of these extensions are required for everybody, or not, few of them are. If an extension is so important that the community decides it should be required for everybody, sometimes there's a brief update to the core RFC, right? But then there's also a cluster of extensions that are like, hey, if you're doing group calendar and delegation, here's the extension for doing delegation interoperably in calendaring, but it's not required. If you're not doing a calendar system with delegation, you don't have to implement it.
So I guess the question that then comes up is, how do we ensure compatibility across implementations? One of the big things that we've pushed over the many years is that all the implementations should work the same, and maybe that's just on some core functionality where all the implementations are guaranteed to work the same, and then we require implementations to list out what extensions they have. I'm not sure the level of participation that we would get in implementing extensions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a primary concern. If there's a solution for that, I'd love to hear it. We have been unsuccessful in doing those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, test suites, if there's enough dedication to build them and publish them, test suites can do a lot but it's sort of like only semi-official. It's partly official in that if you want to ever take an RFC from being a proposed standard RFC to a draft standard RFC to a full standard RFC, demonstrating some interoperability and feature coverage amongst implementations does involve those test suites. So they have a semi-official relationship to the further along, more the standards statuses that not everybody even goes for. But you need a community that extends beyond the working group to really do a good job of test schemas and conformance levels.
I second, I think, to that problem, and there is a massive amount of confusion, and you see people trying to interoperate at large with JSON schema getting really discouraged when there is some legal thing that was supposedly required, or most of them support, and the other one not. It was like, oh, now we can't just adopt it at all, right, and drop the entire thing. And I think so. I also second, what Greg said about the extensions, and maybe the terminology extension. I think that would be a problem. As far as I see it, because as soon as people read the word extension, it carries all the semantics, and then it creates a bit of a mess. So maybe there is a way to do kind of the same effect in a way, but just like not attach it to the extension terminology. I think that can get people confused.
Yeah.
I've put a link to bowtie.report in the chat. This is a project that Julian set up. Julian actually pretty much runs our test suite. And this is a project where he created where it takes all the implementations, or at least a lot of the implementations that we're aware of, puts them in Docker containers, runs them against the entire test suite, and then provides a report of conformance for all of the implementations. So I think this would be a good piece of evidence towards that the thing that you were mentioning, that IETF would need.
Yeah, I guess the nice thing is that test suites are easier than most IETF standards to do for JSON schema specifically.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to automate testing repeatedly and continually between running servers,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that some of the changes that we've made in the spec make things easier for compatibility with extensions. In fact, that was the whole point. Because right now, if one validator uses keywords that another one doesn't, you're gonna run you could run schema in validator A and in validator B and maybe get different results, right? But with the new spec, that won't be the case. Like if that one validator that doesn't support those keywords gets that schema, it's gonna refuse to process the schema. And so that is preparing for that extension model. Of course, that doesn't say anything to what Greg's point about getting people to actually implement those extensions, but at least the language is ready for it.
Yeah. There's no perfect world for these things. The amount when you want, when you are looking at more people getting involved, we're going to need a bigger boat, more implementations, more usage, and more contexts. That sounds great until you realize it's constraining every move you make for changing it, right? it's an inevitable trade-off of success.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, but I think the being able to say, hey, this is JSON schema version X, or whatever version in terminology that you have, or like RFC number, whatever, just getting everybody to agree that that's it, right? Not more and not less. I think it's very valuable. I think people get extremely confused about that at the moment. And for example, let's say if we, again, coming back to the extension thing, even if there was this whole extensions on top of, for example, the core, then how do you correctly say, hey, I'm using JSON schema with these extensions when authoring the schema, right? Having the information in there, which was JSON, what you've demoed with the new URIs, for example, in there, and having clarity that this is exactly what's gonna be. I think that's a very powerful thing that has been hurting a lot.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And knowing the vocabulary proposal or feature as I do, and also seeing Austin's strict proposal, I would love to see other like worked proposals for how to let a schema that wants to be robust, right? A schema, somebody wants to write a schema that they're going to like check into GitHub and it can work for 10 years. How do they rely on that?
Also worth noting, for example, with the strictness, right, that you mentioned before, I think people managed to get that already with JSON schema. I know of a bunch of companies that do their own little meta schemas that reference the 2012 and then they do unevaluated properties false, and then checking meta schema just discards anything that they don't recognize in there. So I think there are common practices in the community to achieving all that, right? So maybe I would put a question mark on whether there should be like a new strict mode, by the specification, because in theory the language allows it, right?
But isn't it the case that unevaluated properties only block some of the ways that you could have? I guess it does block new keywords as long as you put
if you reference
properties everywhere you need it, right?
Well, not everywhere. You just literally reference to the top the 2012 meta schema, put unevaluated properties false once in there. It will reject anything not in there, and you can still extend it with your own ones that will be registered on the unevaluation context. So I know a bunch of companies doing that for real in production. It's a real common practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe documenting these things, right? I think you probably go and like talk to people using JSON schema. I would bet that most of them are unaware that they can even do this, right? So I think there is also the educational aspect to it, which I think it's yeah.
Now
we've actually toyed with doing it ourselves.
A few minutes left, and I would like to leave a little bit of space for some of our other guests to bring up any issues they want to discuss. If you guys don't mind. Would anybody else like to bring up something? We've got just a few more minutes. Otherwise, we'll keep going on this topic for a few more minutes.
Oh yeah, we can talk the entire day, I think, about these things. So if we don't put the hard stuff in, it's whatever.
Honestly, I just wanted to see what you guys were talking about. I don't really have any specific issue to talk about, honestly.
All right.
Well, hope you find it fun, at least.
Unfortunately, I've only entered the chat, the call 10 minutes ago, so I didn't really start from the beginning. So I'm a bit lost. So
I think we're all lost in a way. I think I would say.
From what I understand, the discussion is about problems with interoperability and backwards compatibility. Correct? Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah. I mean, that's part of what we're talking about. Yeah.
I feel like this is a common like the how do I say this? This is like the trajectory of JSON schema right now. Would that be a correct assumption, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are there any like discussions or issues or anything that I can read like on GitHub or something to be up to date on what's going on and stuff, or what?
Well, I think that the thing that we're talking about right now is not something that we have a public discussion going on for just yet. But but we might be soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I apologize for interrupting, and maybe I don't know if we remember where we were at that moment.
What would be the next steps? I guess that would be a question for me, because I think so. I understand some of the friction that the IETF process would put, right, from the point of view of like the new methodology for the spec that we've been talking about. But at the same time, I do think that having a proper RFC for these on the IETF, I think that would be valuable to quite a big audience, right? It doesn't need to be the only place that we do it, right? I think again, like if we would really want to solve the problem, we need to do it in many different orgs at the same time. But I think the IETF one is a big one. I think if we find a way to achieve both, that would be really cool to me.
Yeah. My next steps are, I want to go back to Paul and ask why the JSON working group was rechartered again. This was while I was doing a startup and completely ignoring IETF stuff. Why the JSON working group was chartered and the ECMA stuff was clearly going on at the same time. What was the goal of that? How did the coordination work? Paul will know all of that history, so I'll catch up with him on that specifically. Interesting to think about why the community, the JSON community, would have wanted an ECMA standard as well as an IETF standard, or was it ECMA that wanted a JSON specification number? I don't know who needed it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, but I sense that it's about these normative reference ones, right? I mean, each bubble wants to reference within its own bubble, and we can't escape that. But is there a way that we can? Yeah,
IETF references W3C specs all the time, and IEEE specs. So there's no problem referencing a specification outside of the IETF as long as it's to a stable document series.
Right, but for example, to ECMA, you said it was a bit tricky.
No, I don't think it's tricky. I just think it's rare because of the direction of dependencies. I think ECMA depends on IETF technologies more than the other way around.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking that maybe ECMA had a problem referring to IETF, but
that may be.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Just Lisa, for your information as well, I've also put in a link to our current GitHub, as well as the 2 files for our core and validation, which you've combined for your draft into one file again.
And I also next steps is coordinating with you too, especially on aligning, on getting off the ground in the same direction.
Yeah, so that's going to be primarily me and Jason, and then probably do want to bring up some of those changes that we've made with Austin as well, see if we can incorporate some of the stuff that he's wanting to do. And it sounds to me like he's, from what you've said in this meeting, that he's wanting to propose a lot of the same things that we've done, but maybe in a different way. And so maybe we can try to resolve those differences somehow. So if you would just have a read through those 2 specification changes that we've made. And again, it's mostly around stuff that we've taken out and refining of existing things, as well as the process stuff. But yeah, see, just so you can have an idea of where we're going or where we want to take the spec.
Yeah, I will absolutely do that. I've certainly read these in that location, but I should have taken a look at particularly some of the pull requests that modified things. Like I can see a big rewrite pull request went in 5 months ago.
Yeah, that would have been me.
Yeah, good.
I'll also give you a link to the kind of the board, the project board that I'm working off of in GitHub. It's got a list of all the things that the actual changes that we've been making.
Also, Jason, do you have your talk, the one that you gave at the conference? Is that recorded in any way? Because I think that was very informative, and a lot of people enjoyed that. At least it was a talk in the JSON Schema conference about what's coming up on the V1 and what should people expect out of that. So, and I think people like that a lot.
Oh, very
Yeah.
good.
I don't have a recorded version, but I can certainly share my slides.
Please do.
Or discuss anything, yeah, about it. All right, well, we are about out of time. I guess I'll share those slides on the JSON Schema Slack. Everybody should be around, and any last things before we say goodbye?
Yeah, the YAML stuff, the YAML schema, so that's a totally separate community. The reason I'm asking that, there is other than JSON LD, there's a YAML LD, also part of the JSON LD community.
Yeah, I've seen the YAML schema thing before. My feeling about it is that it's not necessary, because JSON schema works on kind of the data model of JSON, not the actual text. So since YAML and JSON use the same data model, it's really not necessary. Like JSON schema describes YAML just as well as it describes JSON.
Well, I think, I mean, in that link, I was skimming through it though, but maybe as a note in there, it would say they supposedly added a few keywords. It was like a vocabulary for validating some YAML syntax outside of the JSON grammar, which might be questionable and also seems very old and based on draft 4. And with some of the new keywords that they added that they actually have overlap with what we've done in draft 6 as well. So it's like a weird thing. I think, Victor, I wouldn't recommend, relying on it. Or like, I don't think it's a thing, really. Maybe it was like that website that somebody posted and never got any traction whatsoever. But if you're trying to use JSON schema with YAML, that's fully supported in all the tools. Just fine already. That seems to be like a legacy weird thing, maybe. I don't know. I never saw it before this call either.
Yeah,
looking at
the CNCF community, Kubernetes community, that YAML is basically the language. So that's why. So Helm is used to manage the YAMLs, right? So yeah, there might be a need to kind of check the syntax and semantic relationship between the different YAML files.
I CLI supports YAML fully, by the way. I'm dropping the link in case you're not using it. But if you want to work with JSON schema with YAML, that's totally supported.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, just to further what Juan was saying, looking at the extra keywords, there's like one in here called style, and it's specifying the lexicographical requirements of the YAML, whereas JSON schema doesn't say anything about how the JSON is written. It really just follows the data model. You can write the JSON, you can serialize the JSON however you want. So there's a bit of a departure there.
Yeah, it does say it's kind of a depend on extending JSON schema according to that website. Okay, yeah, I see the YAML is supported. Okay, cool, thanks.
That has my own custom YAML parser, by the way. It has been a painful thing. Turns out all of the C and C++ YAML parsers are terrible. That has been a fun of a week at some point.
All right. Well, that extra couple minutes gave me enough time to find that link, so I did put it in the chat.
Yeah, we're making time for you.
Yeah.
All along.
those are delayed for my benefit.
Yes. Yeah, those slides are good.
All right.
I do need to jump, guys. So all the best, and yeah, thank you very much. Looking forward to continue the discussion. Bye.
I have to get back to work.
Bye.
Bye.